Hey everyone, Master Rego here at Peak Performance Training Center, and today we're going to talk about knives, more specifically the combat background of knives. Now me personally, I've been collecting knives and been training with knives for a number of years, over a decade, and I've always had a bit of a passion when it comes to the art of knives, the usefulness, and defending against them. Today we're going to talk about the history of knives. I got some notes right here I'm going to read from. I got some knives from my own personal collection. Now, if you want to hear us talking about, or hear me, talk about each knife specifically, we're going to make a separate video about that. Today we're just going to run through all the different kinds of knives that have formed through the generations. Let's get started. Starting with the very beginning, as long as mankind has been around, blades have been a very useful tool. Now, that's what knives or blades started out as, is tools. Mankind during the Stone Age, they would make blades like arrow tips and spears to do their slaying when they went hunting, but they would use blades to then cut the hide. They're farming knives, not farming knives, hunting knives were pretty much the first kinds of knives. Now, I call them blades, not knives. And the main reason is the definition, literal definition of a knife is an instrument composed of a blade fixed into a handle used for cutting or as a weapon. That is the official definition of a knife. So the very first quote-unquote knives made out of stone and flint, I call those more blades. They were still very sharp. They can still do the job very well, but they were just blades that they were holding in their hands. Now, blades have indeed been around since the Stone Age, like I just mentioned. However, it wasn't until the Bronze Age, shortly after about 3000 BC, these blades started to form into true knives. So when the Bronze Age came around, that's when they started messing with copper and bronze. That's when they officially started making metal knives, or blades. When they made these blades, they had to, of course, have a way to hold them, so that's when handles started coming around. Now we have the formation of a knife. Now, these knives are still very rough, very jagged looking, but they're still very sharp. They did the job that was necessary. However, it wasn't until about the Iron Age we started really seeing more transformations. Now, during this time of the Bronze Age, knives were forged out of copper and bronze, like I just mentioned. Around this time, we started to see a new style of knife known as the dagger. Now, I got a knife here that is very reminiscent of the dagger. Dagger is pretty much purely designed for combat. There's no other use for it. It's designed to stab and cut with. Now, dagger, if you can see this one, this is a old military knife. Once again, I'll talk about these more specifically, separate video. But a dagger is a two-bladed knife. There's a blade on each side instead of just one side. They come to a point in the middle. Like I said, these are purely just for attacking with. Straight up weapon, not a tool. Now, then the Iron Age came around about 1200 BC and changed the development of knives to the same way we make them today. Now, believe it or not, 1200 BC, when they started about the Iron Age, started making knives out of steel, not much has changed since then. I know it's hard to believe. There has been different technologies that have been implemented, but when it comes to the basic design of a knife made out of steel, not much has changed through the years. They're pretty much still the same today. Alright, this time period brought knives like the, now I apologize if I mispronounce anything here, but knives like the rondel, the bollock, the Roman pugio, and the infamous Japanese tanto. Now, Roman pugio is a popular one. It was the knife used, or a couple of them used, to assassinate Julius Caesar during that whole thing going on. Very common knife to be carried around by most Romans during the Roman Empire, and especially during Roman soldiers. Smaller version of the infamous sword that they used during the Roman time. Can't remember the exact name off the top of my head right now. That's because we're talking about knives, not swords. Now, the Japanese tanto, infamous knife that the samurai carried around. Now, go watch our other video talking about the katana, but they used to carry around two swords, the katana and the wakizashi. But one was small, a little bit smaller than the other. But hidden, not in plain sight, they carried around a tanto most of the time, either in a sleeve or tucked away in their uniform somewhere. Now, I have a knife here. I call this my mini katana. is very reminiscent to a Japanese tanto. It has that same particular shape, that rounded shape all the way through. The only problem with this one is primarily for cutting, not good for thrusting or stabbing because there's no guard. There's nothing to protect your finger from slipping up. All right, moving on into the notes. We're going to talk about some different kinds of knives that started popping up through the years, popular combat-related knives. The first one we're going to talk about is the karambit. Karambit is known to this day as one of, if not the most deadliest knife in the world, mainly because of its claw or hook-shaped blade. I don't have one of those with me, but started as a Agarian, not quite sure how to pronounce that. Let me know in the comments. A tool from Asia in the 11th century, and its iconic curved blade, like I said, made it infamous as a very dangerous weapon to be used. Now, the karambit I've seen used a lot in FMA, or Filipino martial arts, such as Kali. The next one is the kukri. This one is also very infamous for it's more of a machete type. It's a large knife, maybe even a short sword, but it's popular for its hooked, or not hooked, but crooked midpoint in the blade. Started in the 16th century, used by Nepalese warriors recruited into the British military. So this thing became very popular and is still popular today. The dirk, another very popular dagger through history. The dirk came from Scotland around 600, so about that time period, designed for combat, favored by sailors. Sailors love this. I believe more notably the Russians really liked it during their sailing. We're going to go ahead and pause it here. This is part 1 of talking about knives. If you would like to continue watching, hearing about knives and going through the history, please stick around for part 2. We'll see you then.